Welcome in, everybody. We're about to embark on a deep dive today. And trust me, this one's tailor-made for you. We're cracking open NDP1, but not just skimming the surface, we're going deep. Starting with Chapter 1, Who We Are.
You got it. And let me tell you, this isn't just some dusty old history lesson. This chapter, it's like the bedrock, the foundation for getting what the U.S. Naval Service is all about, its identity, its mission, its place on the world stage. It's the why behind everything you do out there.
Okay, so let's jump right in. Right off the bat, the document throws us this curveball. It calls America a country with, let's be honest, more land than it knows what to do with, a maritime nation. Now, that's going to make you
hmm
tilt your head a bit, especially as someone who, serves in the Navy. What's the story there?
It's funny how we can sometimes miss the obvious, right? The document reminds us that we might be a big presence on land, but our history, our economy, even our global standing, it's all deeply woven together with the oceans. They've been our shield and our gateway to the world. And that connection to the sea, that's where the Navy's role becomes crystal clear.
It's like the oceans are this massive chessboard, and the Navy, you guys are calling the shots.
You got it. And speaking of strategy, there's this quote from Alfred Thayer Mahan in the document. Really drives the point home. He says, controlling the seas, particularly along those vital lines of national interest, it's the key to a nation's power and prosperity. Plain and simple.
Hard to argue with that. And it's crazy when you think about it. The document says that 90%, a whopping 90% of global trade travels by sea. That's just an insane amount of stuff moving across the waves every single day.
It is. And that means what you do, ensuring that maritime security, it's not just about protecting ships, it's about protecting the lifeblood of the global economy. That's a heavy lift.
No doubt about it. And speaking of heavy lifting, the document lays out these 7 core attributes of naval forces: lethal, mobile, expeditionary, agile, scalable, sustainable, and versatile. It's like the Navy SEALs of attributes ready for anything.
Right. We're going to break down each of these because they're not just fancy words. They're the DNA of what makes the Navy capable of handling such a diverse and, let's be honest, demanding mission.
So let's start with lethal. Seems pretty self-explanatory, yeah.
You'd think so, but it's more than just firepower, right? It's about that full spectrum of capabilities the Navy brings to the table, deterring aggression, and if it comes down to it, winning decisively. It's about staying ahead of the tech curve, relentless training, being ready to face anything, anywhere.
It's that peace through strength idea, but, with some serious teeth.
Exactly. Now, mobile, that one's at the core of what makes naval forces unique.
It's more than just ships cruising around, right?
Way more. It's about global reach, being able to respond to a crisis anywhere in the world, repositioning, staying under the radar when you need to, and hitting hard and fast when they least expect it. That's true mobility.
So, being everywhere and nowhere at the same time. Keep 'em guessing. But this leads to another question. The document talks about expeditionary capability. Now, that's easy to picture with the Marines, but how does that work for the Navy as a whole?
Well, think about it. Most U.S. military operations, they happen overseas,
Yeah.
often a long way from any friendly base. The Navy's the key to projecting power across those distances. They set up a forward presence, keep those supply lines open, basically enable the entire joint force to operate effectively in those far-off corners of the world.
So they're like the ultimate stage crew, setting up and making sure the show can go on wherever it needs to.
Perfect analogy. It's about being ready to project power anywhere, anytime.
And to be effective in those situations, you need agility, right?
Absolutely. The maritime environment, it's unpredictable, constantly shifting. You got to be able to think on your feet, adapt to the situation, and take the initiative. That's agility.
Like they say, no plan survives contact with the enemy. You got to be able to roll with the punches.
Exactly. And that ties right into another attribute, scalability.
So we're talking about adjusting the volume, right? Showing just the right amount of force for the situation.
We got it. Naval forces can be a whisper or a roar, depending on what the situation calls for. It's about wielding influence with precision, from quiet diplomacy to a very loud show of force.
From a handshake to, well, you get the idea. And then there's sustainable. Can't underestimate that when you're talking about operating far from home for long stretches.
No kidding. The document really stresses the importance of self-sufficiency and having your logistics down pat. Being able to operate for extended periods, far from those comfy bases, without relying on others, that's huge.
It's like packing for deployment, but on a whole other level. You need everything to go the distance: fuel, food, ammo, spare parts, you name it.
Exactly. Which brings us to our last attribute, versatile. The Navy's built to be multi-mission, commanding the seas, denying access to adversaries, projecting power ashore, humanitarian aid. disaster relief, you name it, they do it.
Talk about a jack of all trades and a master of all, too, right?
Right. That versatility is what makes the Navy ready to answer the call, whatever it may be.
This deep dive really highlights how all these attributes come together to make such an adaptable and, let's be honest, formidable force. But it's not just about the ships and the tech, is it?
Nope. It's about the people. The document says it best. Our greatest strategic resource is the character of our people. And that takes us to the idea of mission command, a concept that's deeply rooted in the naval service and really speaks to the trust and empowerment that defines it.
Okay, now that's something I want to unpack, but first we got to take a quick break for a word from our sponsors. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with more of your personalized deep dive into NDP-1. And we're back, folks, diving headfirst back into NDP-1 and this whole mission command thing. They make it sound like a pretty big deal, a deep-rooted tradition in the naval service. So what makes this style of command so important, especially when you're out there dealing with the unpredictable nature of the sea?
Okay, picture this. You're on a ship, miles from land, no instant communication. Back in the day, before we could just shoot a text or hop on a video call, you're facing a situation, could be a storm brewing, a potential enemy contact, whatever. You can't exactly wait around for orders from some headquarters miles away.
That's where mission command comes in.
Bingo. It's all about giving those on the front lines, the leaders, at every level, the power to make crucial decisions right there, right when it matters, based on what they're seeing on the ground.
Trusting the people in the thick of it to make the call.
You got it. Give clear objectives, encourage people to take initiative, and trust your team to get the job done even when things get messy. Because let's face it, they always do. And this approach, it's not some dusty old relic from the past, it's even more important today.
Wait, really? Even with all our fancy tech and instant communication?
Especially because of it. The world's a complicated place, the maritime domain even more so. Things change fast. Being able to make decisions on the fly, adapt to the situation, that's more critical than ever.
It's about being light on your feet, adjusting to the changing tides, right? So how does mission command actually work in the structure of the naval service?
It's everywhere. Think about how the Navy and Marine Corps are set up: task forces, expeditionary units, you name it. These modular units, they can be put together quickly and tailored for specific missions.
Like having a toolbox and knowing exactly which tool to use for the job.
Exactly, and knowing how to use those tools together effectively. The document really emphasizes the importance of everyone being able to work together seamlessly, Navy and Marine Corps, all working towards a common goal.
That's that combined arms approach, right? Bringing all the different pieces together, the ships, the submarines, the aircraft, even cyber and space, all working in sync.
You got it. It's about leveraging the strengths of each piece to overcome challenges and, seize the opportunity when it presents itself.
And that kind of teamwork, that synergy, it all comes down to everyone being on the same page, understanding the mission. Which brings us back to the heart of it all, the people, wouldn't you say?
100%. At the end of the day, it's the men and women of the U.S. Naval Service, their dedication, their commitment, their skills. They're the ones who make it all happen.
They're the ones who breathe life into those 7 core attributes we talked about.
You said it. And the document acknowledges that, stating that our greatest strategic resource is the character of our people.
It's not just about the hardware and the tech. It's about the human element, the dedication, the commitment to something bigger than yourself. And that brings us to another important player in the maritime world, the U.S. Coast Guard. The document makes it clear they're not just there to help out, they're a vital part of the naval service, in peacetime and in war.
Absolutely. You can't overstate the Coast Guard's role in defending our own backyard. They're the guardians, the ones protecting our coasts, our ports, our waterways, making sure trade flows freely and our maritime borders are secure.
A huge responsibility. And they're also ready to team up with the Navy for wartime missions. That's adaptability for you, like having a powerhouse team ready to step up when the game's on the line.
Exactly. The Navy, the Marines, the Coast Guard, each with their own strengths, all working together, unified, committed to the safety and success of the United States. Now, that's a force to be reckoned with.
This deep dive, it's been eye-opening. It really gives you a new appreciation for just how complex and important the naval service is, especially the link between America's maritime identity and its place in the world.
A connection that goes way back to the very beginning of this nation.
And as we look ahead, with the maritime domain becoming even more complex, more challenging, the lessons in NDP-1, especially those in who we are, they're going to be key to making sure America stays strong and prosperous.
Couldn't agree more.
Makes you think, doesn't it? That whole idea, the ocean, our history as a nation, the Navy's role in it all, it's a lot bigger than just one ship, that's for sure.
It really is.
Yeah.
And it highlights why we need to get that why, not just the what we're doing.
For sure. And speaking of the why, we got to circle back to that line in NDP 1, the one about how the course of our nation depends upon our ability to maintain the freedom of the seas. That's a pretty powerful statement.
No kidding, gets right to the heart of it. That freedom to navigate the oceans, to keep trade flowing, to project power when we have to deter those who might try something. These aren't just ideas, they have real consequences in the world.
And they impact every single American, whether they know it or not, right?
Absolutely. And that leads to a big question, one I bet you've thought about.
Hmm.
The world's changing fast, new alliances popping up, technology moving at warp speed. How's the Naval Service going to keep adapting to keep those seas free, for the generations coming up after us?
$1 million question right there.
It is. I don't have a crystal ball, but I think the answers are baked right into those principles we've been discussing. Adaptability, innovation, that dedication to the mission, no matter what.
So embracing new tech, new ways of doing things, and making sure those coming up through the ranks, the future leaders, they get it. They get how to navigate this whole 21st century world on the water and off.
Nailed it.
Right.
And never forgetting that human element, the guts, the resilience, the commitment of every single person who puts on the uniform. That's the real guarantee right there.
Couldn't have said it better myself. This deep dive into NDP-1 has been pretty eye-opening. Gives you a whole new level of respect for what the Naval Service does, how it keeps us safe and prosperous now and down the road.
I'm with you on that.
Well, folks, that wraps up our deep dive into NDP-1. Keep those brains engaged out there, keep asking those tough questions, and until next time, fair winds and following seas.